Threatening to use a constitutional convention to secure a balanced budget amendment from Congress is like using a thermonuclear device to destroy an iceberg. If you can bring yourself to the preposterous position of saying, well, yes, we did have a runaway convention in 1787, but it can't ever happen again, please first consider these additional remarks of Stanford Law School professor Gunther. Quote, "A convention once called would be in the same position as the only other convention of this kind that we have had in our history. The 1787 Constitutional Convention that proposed the Constitution that we live under today and whose bicentennial we celebrated so recently. The Philadelphia Convention, too, was in effect a runaway convention." Ending the quote. You and your colleagues have come to depend upon certain national organizations which have a history of providing helpful information and technical assistance about a variety of topics concerning state government. Chief among them are the National Taxpayers Union, the National Tax Limitation Committee, and the American Legislative Exchange Council, or ALEC. They have developed a level of credibility with you because of your ongoing association with them. When these organizations support a balanced budget convention and claim only to want a balanced budget and not a convention, it is easy to want to believe them. The core of their statements in hearings before legislatures around the nation is, quote, "Don't worry, a runaway convention is impossible," closing the quote. It can be hard to doubt their claims and representations in light of their past helpfulness. However, that helpfulness in other areas of state government cannot justify their position in resisting rescission of con-con applications in light of the crushing weight of legal opinion concerning the dangers created by leaving these applications in an active condition. The issue was handled superbly by Rex E. Lee, former president of Brigham Young University, and a former member of the law school faculty at that institution. He had received a letter of inquiry from a member of the Utah legislature concerning the scope of authority which an Article 5 convention would have. He stated, quote, "This is in response to your letter on December 12th, in which you asked for my opinion concerning whether under Article 5 of the United States Constitution, a constitutional convention called to consider a particular issue could be limited either by congressional directive or otherwise to that single issue. The only safe statement that could be made on this subject is that no one knows. But the only relevant precedent would indicate that the convention could not be so limited. Anyone who purports to express a definitive view on this subject is either deluded or deluding." Ending the quote. We are tempted to ask why such well-established organizations as the National Taxpayers Union, the National Tax Limitation Committee, and ALEC continue to advocate a convention which puts our Constitution in jeopardy. While no one can look into the mind of another man, one answer seems most probable. They have spent a great deal of time, money, and attention in their quest for a balanced federal budget. When they focused upon using a con-con as the remedy, the dangers of such a convention had not been disclosed fully. America's best legal minds had not yet considered the issue and revealed the deadly perils inherent in the supposed remedy. It is not easy to admit that you are wrong, and it is more difficult yet to flush the time, money, and effort which have already been expended on the project. Once having set a course on a path based upon error, it is easier to continue on that path than to reverse course. This is particularly true for organizations such as these, which have solicited money from the public on the pretext of fixing the budget problem by using a constitutional convention. An about-face on this issue runs the risk of losing public support, public confidence, and financial contributions on an issue which has little public understanding. If the American public truly knew of the jeopardy which a convention poses to the Constitution, there is no doubt that the people of America would demand no constitutional convention. Convention advocates have touted the ratification process for amendments as an adequate safety net to prevent adoption of bad amendments. They claim that there is no danger of a constitutional convention having the authority to change the Constitution. All it can do is propose amendments. It cannot enact them, they assert. They place total reliance on a great safety net called ratification. Any amendments proposed by a convention must go to the states for ratification, they have erroneously claimed. Remember that the ratification process was not sufficient to stop the runaway convention, which met in 1787. Fortunately, that convention gave us the superb document which we call the United States Constitution. But the delegates were called to meet in Philadelphia for the sole and express purpose of revising the Articles of Confederation and reporting to Congress and the several legislatures such alterations and provisions therein. Yet it did not take the delegates long to assume upon themselves more powers than what they had been given, to scrap the Articles of Confederation and to propose a totally different system of government. As they finished their work, they faced a serious problem. The Articles of Confederation were still in full force and effect. Any amendments to that document had to be ratified by the Congress as well as by each and every one of the legislatures of the 13 states. The founders knew the politics of their day. It was impossible. To overcome the problem, they agreed to ignore the clear requirements of the law under which they operated. They rewrote the rules of ratification so that the chances of approval were improved. They provided that 9 states were sufficient to put the new Constitution into effect. And since the founders anticipated resistance to ratification in the state legislatures, they further changed the rules of ratification so that it could be accomplished in special ratifying conventions called only for that purpose. The new Constitution did not have to face hostile state legislatures in order to be approved. While the new Constitution has provided the world's best government, it was nevertheless adopted in complete disregard of the rules of ratifications which were in effect. The point is simply this: the governing rules of ratification were totally ignored and disregarded once in our history. Who can say with a straight face that it can never happen again? A new convention could rewrite the rules of ratification for a new Constitution just as it could rewrite or eliminate any other part of the Constitution as we now know it. It has already happened once. Richard B. Morris, Professor of History Emeritus, Columbia University, in his comprehensive history of the writing of our Constitution, entitled Witnesses at the Creation, wrote, quote, "The delegates at the convention were sober realists. They knew that the greatest battles lay ahead. The convention had overstepped its instructions. It had scrapped the articles instead of amending them. Having defied Congress, the convention decided to pursue what amounted to a revolutionary course by declaring the ratification by 9 states sufficient for the establishment of this Constitution between the states, so ratifying the same. In other words, the Constitution was being submitted directly to the people through ratifying conventions. Not even Congress, which had summoned the convention, would be asked to approve its work. Still, Congress, after acrimonious debate and without endorsement or disavowal, did submit the Constitution to the state legislatures to be submitted in turn to conventions in accordance with Article 7 of the Constitution, providing that once 9 states had ratified the Constitution, it would go into effect between the affirming states." There ends the quote. Among the assurances offered by convention advocates that bad amendments can't happen is their claim that Congress can refuse to send what they call unauthorized amendments out for ratification. This claim is too silly to receive much consideration. Unauthorized by whom? There is no such thing as an unauthorized amendment. Once a convention is called, it is authorized to propose whatever it chooses. If anyone offers you this foolish argument, ask him to show you where in the Constitution Congress is given the power to withhold an amendment proposed by a convention from the ratification process. No such power exists. It is a creation by the same spin artists who have created the other myths and misconceptions about the so-called limited power of a con-con. Another of the spin artists' claims is that the Supreme Court can strike down any proposed amendment which exceeds a convention's authority. This is as asinine as the previous one. It wrongly assumes the existence of such a thing as an unauthorized amendment.